Mino Lion Media presents Business First.
Hi, all, and welcome to a new episode of Business First with Sonia Aline. I am your host, and today I'd like to introduce an interesting guest. I mean, I think we always have interesting guests. C. Sonny Martin is with us today. He is the head of C. Sonny Martin and Associates. He has self-published over 65 books, and he is the author of The Making of a Black Millionaire, which you can get right now on Amazon. Welcome, Sonny. How are you?
Good to be with you this evening.
Same here, same here. We spent a good amount of time today talking about your background and your thoughts and strategies that you share with the people that you coach and people that you are passionate about helping. And one of the things that you said to me that really struck me was, I believe it was an interview you heard with Jamie Dimon, who is the CEO of JP Morgan Chase. And he was asked a question, and it was his response that you said was a light bulb moment for you as well. It was when you shared it with me. Would you share that with the listening audience, please?
Jamie Dimon had taken a sabbatical away from JP Morgan Chase, and he'd had a bout with cancer. I believe it was throat cancer. And, you know, we know how contentious the last presidential election was in 2016. And so he was gone during that whole period, dealing and recovering from his bout with cancer. And so when he came back, to the office and cancer was behind him, he was doing a video interview with a Wall Street Journal journalist. And I just happened to catch it on LinkedIn. And I'm always intrigued by, titans of industry and business. And I'd seen The Wolf of Wall Street in the second version of it. And there's no doubt that was Jamie Dimon in that movie, right? But I was just interested in his perspective. And the Wall Street Journal journalist asked him, he says, so what do you think about our politics now that President Trump's in office? And he said, listen, we have a great democracy. The pendulum swings back and forth from Democrat to Republican. And, we deal with social issues and the Republicans do their thing. He said, that's never concerned me in any way, shape, or form. He said, well, what do you think is the most pressing thing in America that you're in tune with? He says, I'll tell you what, when I was out with cancer, I start understanding, the problems in the urban areas. And I commissioned a study because I couldn't believe what I was hearing, that in many urban cities, metropolitan cities throughout the United States, 10 or 12 of them, that young urban African-American teens are not graduating from high school. They're deciding not to even get their high school degree. He says, and that just troubled me. And I just wanted to know what was at the core reason why they were not graduating. He said, so I commissioned a study with McKinsey and Company. And those people that know McKinsey out of Chicago is one of the foremost international research firms in the country that major CEOs and international companies rely on to do their white paper studies. This, that, and McKinsey comes back and they give him this report. And there's 12 major metropolitan areas where kids are not graduating from high school. And they're not even eligible for military service because of their low reading and writing scores and issues dealing with health, diabetes, because they're not active. And he said, this is a major problem. We're losing trillions of dollars in productivity with these kids not in the workforce. He says, back in the day, we had skill-based training in high school. So if you weren't going to go to college, you could take, carpentry or home ec or plumbing or automobile mechanic shop, and you go to school half a day, you're working in the trades the rest of the day. He said, but that's all gone with the baby in the bathwater. So he wanted to make a major financial commitment to $8 million, I think it was. And he picked out about 5 or 6 metro areas that he wanted to be able to invest in those people that had programs that can get these dropouts back in school to earn their degree to get them in the workforce. So hearing him say that was an aha moment for me because I'm very in tune to the African-American community and the leaders in the African-American community. And I've never heard Jesse Jackson mention that, Al Sharpton, T.D. Jakes, none of the people that we look up as leaders of the Black community. And here is the chairman and CEO of a major bank that's identifying this issue. And we're just, those of us that have gotten into middle class have done well. We've just ignored all these kids. And this has been going on for a long time. And these kids not only are not eligible for nothing other than minimum wage. They found out during the report that 70% of the young men are on a trajectory to the prison industrial complex. And so, entrepreneurs are visionaries that try and provide solutions to problems. What is the solution to this problem? I don't necessarily think that you can ride on a white horse in the Black community to throw money at it. I think it's going to take the intentional efforts of those of us who have succeeded and come from those same neighborhoods that, definitely when I was growing up, I didn't know of a single person that did not graduate from high school. I think one lady, she couldn't graduate because she was pregnant. So she couldn't walk, but she still got her degree, right? So these are issues that are current day issues that we didn't have to deal with. And I came straight up from the hood. It wasn't the South Side of Chicago, but it was the hood, And then you got young men under the age of 30 shooting and killing other young men under the age of 30. All the way through college, I never knew of anybody in the hood that got shot or got killed by another Black person with a gun. So we've got these social issues that are going on that deteriorate in our community in such a way. And then you look at some of the other reports that came out. The Wall Street, Washington Post did a study, 50 years past Martin Luther King's death. Where is economically the Black community today? And their report suggested that we are worse off now economically as a community than we were 50 years ago. How's that even possible? Ownership rate hasn't gone up. More African Americans are incarcerated. The only positive thing that has happened in 50 years, this report acknowledged, was more African Americans have reached the middle class. 22% of us, not me, of you, have 4-year degrees. But how is it that we're worse off economically than we were 50 years ago as a community? The Black churches are still thriving. They've got mega churches everywhere now. And we don't have those preachers in the street. Al Sharpton's in the street, obviously, fighting for social justice issues, but we don't have enough of them. Martin Luther King was a preacher. He died in Memphis with the Poor People's March, advocating for sanitation workers who are only making $1.75 an hour. And Malcolm X talked about our economic sustainability. Who we give our money to is who controls us. And so we lost a generation of African-American entrepreneurs through integration. We couldn't go to Mr. Charlie's place, but all of a sudden, oh man, we can go in those places now. And we left our Black businesses behind. And
some of the other things we talked about were the statistics for Black businesses as well, which are just as devastating as the numbers that we saw from the Washington Post report.
I'm kind of an emotional guy, and I'm very passionate about whatever it is that I dedicate my time to, be it business or whatever. And I'm a serial entrepreneur. I'm not gonna lie to you. I started my first business at 22, got my SBA loan a couple of years later, and that was the only loan I've ever gotten open for a business. But I said to myself, I come from the inner city. I am not a college graduate. How is it possible that 96% of African-American businesses are not able to even gross $100,000 a year revenue? So they're not entrepreneurs, they're self-employed. They're choosing to do their own thing rather than get a job. Because if you look at the average business, it's got 40 to 50% of expenses. So if you're bringing in less than 100 grand, you've got $50,000 worth of expenses. And the SBA says that 80% of small businesses who have no employees, 0 employees, their revenues are 50 grand a year and their profits are less than 25,000. And so when we look at the economic stability of the Black community, we're very fragile. I mean, very, very, very fragile. And I said to myself, I said, well, what was it that I did? I had a business doing $150,000 in my 20s. But you know what it was? Having never taken a business course. I got out of college, I went into television news, hated it, and did radio, and decided to get out of that and wanted to be my own boss and start my own business and control my own time. And freedom. We always look for that freedom from the control of other people. And it's, entrepreneurs are risk takers. All right, we take risks, but we take calculated risks. All right. So I said, Why aren't more African Americans successful business owners? What is it that keeps them from even bringing in $100,000 a year? And then I did further studies, and the SBA states that only 7% of all small businesses of the nation's 30.5 million small businesses in the United States of America, only 7% of them bring in $1 million a year. And if you're talking about African American businesses, that's less than 2%. And so the government defines a small business as a business that has less than 500 employees and has less than $50 million in assets. Now, we don't think of a small business being that big, right? That's huge. 500 employees. I had a $5 million company and I had 40 employees, But when you look at the small businesses in America are America's largest employers. So when you look at the big Amazons and the Walmarts and the big, super big, huge corporations, Microsoft, Facebook, whatever, the backbone of this country was built with small businesses, the free enterprise system. We're a capitalistic society, so there's tons. You could drive down any street, you'll see restaurants and dry cleaners and cupcake places and boutiques, and small business is the backbone of America. But why are we not engaged in it? To me, I'm just going to be totally transparent with you. A job to me meant just over broke. We were brought up with a generation that our parents told us to go get our education and go get a job, a good paying job. So the 60s and the 70s, employment opportunities opened up for African Americans, those good government jobs at the post office. Everybody in my family worked at the post office, and it paid good. And that brought us into the middle class. And I took a summer job at the post office because my aunt was head of personnel. And I really thought a monkey could do that job. And I'm like, oh my God. I mean, it paid a crazy amount of money, but I'm like, I could never do this. I'm looking at letters and I just got to put them with the last two numbers of the zip code in a slot all day for 8 hours. Are you kidding me? I'm going, oh, no, not for me. I quit. And I said, to be predictable, to get a check for the same amount every 2 weeks, where you're putting in the labor, they're paying you after you put in your labor. I said, well, I always be broke. But when I open up a business and I turn that open for business sign in, I'm bringing money in on a daily basis in my pocket. So if anything comes up or whatever, I got cash flow. You have a job, the government's taking your federal taxes, your state taxes, your city taxes, your Social Security out of it. You're giving them a interest-free loan for a year. They're not giving you no interest on your money. And then you settle up with them a year later. And they say, thank you very much.
Based on some of the things that you are presenting and the things that we talked about and the things that we know, entrepreneurship in our community is not just about, at least that seems really clear now, right? It's really not about us being able to provide something for ourselves because we're frustrated. Because a lot of people who go into entrepreneurship are frustrated in their work environments, or they weren't able to get the promotions, or they've had it with subjugating themselves to the racism. Entrepreneurship for our community is really an act of activism, isn't it? Like
it's economic activism at its best. And let me explain something. I don't want to get too deep in this, but there's a big difference in being a small business owner and being an entrepreneur. Okay. There's a big difference.
Right.
Every small business owner is not an entrepreneur. If you got a pizza shop and you're making pizzas, you're a small business owner. You're not necessarily an entrepreneur that's disrupting something and doing something more innovative than anybody else. How many places in New York City can you go get a hamburger? A ton of places. So what's going to make you stand out in the marketplace? How are you going to exceed people's expectations? They're going to go out and shout for joy and tell everybody they need to come and do business with you. Is it your personality? Is it some hit or giddy up that you're doing different, that's unique, that's innovative? And when you look at business, Peter Drucker, one of the world's foremost economists, said it the best. I never heard it put so bluntly. And he had a annual report that came out on America's most innovative businesses, small businesses, big businesses, whatever. And he said, there's two major values that make a business successful. Two, that's it. Number one is marketing, and number two is innovation. When you put those two together, marketing and innovation, he says, everything else is expenses. Everything else is just expenses. So we were having a conversation today when I got the aha moment in my radio job when I asked for a $50 a week raise. And the gentleman that owned the radio station, a black radio station that is, who happened not to be black, and we were hired to help the DJs. We saw him maybe once or twice a week. He'd come in the side door and count his money and leave. And I, butterflies in my stomach, my chest all swelled up. My ratings were great. And I'm going in there for a $50 a week raise because I'm one of those guys that I looked at the log sheet of the commercials. I'm going, this guy's making $12,000 a week in my time period, 10 to 2. He can certainly afford $50. That's like quarters in his pocket. And my other job, Sonny, don't ask for a raise, man. You just got it. You ain't been on the job 6 months. I said, man, this dude is making 12 grand. I'm getting paid $400 a week. He can afford $50. And he gave me the baptism of business. He said, business is only about 3 things. Bring in the most revenue as you can, your gross revenue, have as little amount of expenses as possible so that your profit is huge. He says, so I'm not giving you a raise because I don't have to. Profit is not a dirty word. And when you leave that seat, I've got a stack of resumes on that file cabinet that I can be Stevie Wonder blind and pull one out, and they'd love to be sitting in your same seat.
For free.
They would do it for free for the experience. And that was the lesson in supply and demand. There was a greater demand for people wanting a job, but a very little supply. So he held all the cards were in his favor. He didn't have to give me, he said, if you're looking for a raise, the answer is no. And gave me that little crash course in baptism, what business was all about. I couldn't speak. He wasn't racist. He was a capitalist. He was a businessman. He don't have to give nobody a raise. He got a foot stack of resumes that, like he said, he could be Stevie Wonder and put one up. Oh, they would just love the job. He said, the only reason I pay y'all anything because the government says I have to pay you something. To me, it was like you might as well slap me with a piece of bologna. And I said, at that moment, I'm never going to look back. I'm never going to work for nobody else. I'm going to own me a business. But I'm going to treat my employees much better than I will never have that kind of conversation with my employees.
And so you became an entrepreneur at 25?
Oh, I was 22.
22.
Yeah. I left college my junior year and worked in television news. I lasted in that job 6 months because they told me if it bleeds, it leads. They don't need to look too far in my community for that. And I said, oh, this ain't for me. I'm Nat Turner. I'm not going to be your guy telling all these negative stories about the Black community. See ya, I'm out of here. Then I got into radio and I was just blown away. It was an extension of college. You got, women calling you up on the hotline. You're talking, they named me Sonny Love. And I'm going, this ain't going to last long. I'm going to get in a world of trouble. I need to get serious about my life. But when he baptized me into the understanding what a business enterprise was, and you need to be focused on 3 things: bringing in as much revenue as you can, having your expenses as small as possible so that you have profit. And it's not a dirty word. I was geeked. I had no fear. I was an athlete and I was a pretty good athlete. So I was disciplined. I had all those tenets of putting in the work ethic, I was passionate about it. So I wasn't scared of nothing. And I said, well, there's one thing for sure. If I don't try, I'll never know if I succeed. And I guess I was just young, 22 years of age,
I'm glad you said discipline, because when you asked me earlier, what was the single most important skill set that someone needed to succeed in business, I thought discipline, consistency, and you said neither to those two. What was it?
Yeah. Every business in America sells a product or a service. So if you're going to be in business, you better learn how to sell. It needs to be your guardian angel. You need to understand the tenets of selling. Now, marketing is great. And I was a great marketing guy. I could go out and tell people, about this, that, and the other, get them psyched and pumped up and want to do business with me, hand out my brochures and this, that, and the other. But when I had to call on people to sell, I hate it's like, the image that we have of salespeople is not good. Let's put it that way. And the reason why it is not good, because 90% of the people or 95% of the people that are in that profession have never been trained properly. Because sales is just solving problems. That's all it is. You're solving a problem for a client and a customer. And the value of what you're bringing to the table to solve that problem is so high, they'll always find a way to pay for it. Give you an example, a real quick example. You go into a major department store and a sales associate approach you. What's typically the first thing he's going to say to you?
May I help you?
Now, let me tell you something. I'm a master sales trainer. Why in the world, if your profession requires you to help people and earn a commission and earn a living, why would your first question be a question that 99.9% of people will say, no, thank you, I'm just looking? So why would you ask them a question where the obvious answer is going to be no? It just don't make sense, right? But it happens thousands of millions of times a day. So I'm never going to get hit with the no ball. It's like dodgeball. No, you're not going to hear me say no. You know what I'm going to do, Sonia? Can you stand up just for a second, real quick?
Stand up?
Yeah, would you just stand up for a second?
I'm stand up. Nobody's seeing this.
Okay, will you sit back down? I asked you to do something you did when I asked you to do it. And you had no idea of the reason I asked you.
That's right, no.
So as a salesperson, you got to take control of your environment. All right? And so if I am doing this, it makes sense, right? That's called the hinge. Try and shake your head no when I'm shaking my head yes. It's hard to do. So we as human beings, we have three prominent ways that we communicate to each other. And the words that come out of our mouth are the least effective communication mode. Body language is number one. Knowing how to change the tone of our voice to draw the customer in is the number two quality of great salespeople.
Wow.
And then the words that we say. Knowing when to take dramatic pauses, because you're building your brand of authority. People like to do business with people they like, they respect, and they know. Like, respect, and know. Like, respect, and know. Like, respect, and know. People love to buy, but they hate to be sold. They love to buy, but they hate to be sold. Women know it better than anybody else on the planet. You're at the club and a brother comes up to you and he's talking all this crazy stuff and blah, 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 blah. We know that he ain't going to service what he's selling. We know what his ulterior motive is. That's the way we feel with salespeople every day. Because we don't trust them. Oh, here come the golden voice. Watch out for that, brother. But it's our human interaction with each other that really, if you learn those skills and you master those skills and you master, as we were talking about earlier, the different types of personalities you may be in front of. The analytics are different than the drivers, the egotistical maniacs. They're different from the amiable people. Amiable people, they're pretty quiet and cool and they're just checking you out to see if you're okay, I'm okay, if they feel comfortable with you. So if you're talking about you love you some Donald Trump and they happen to hate him, you are gone. You are lost. It's over with, right? Or you're talking about something in your personal life that they happen to absolutely disagree with. They're like, pew, out of here. So you have to be able to discern yourself within 2.5, 3 minutes who you're talking to and what personality. We're taught that we shouldn't judge people and put them all in the same, but people distinctively have different personality traits.
And so sales continues to be it's the number one skill set that if you are a business owner, you have to master. You should be able to master.
There's plenty of books that you can read. And as I mentioned to you earlier today, the book that I stumbled on, this book right here, Brian Tracy, The Psychology of Selling. It just was such an aha moment for me that opened up my eyes because I hated sales. People, I hated selling. You know why? Because of the fear of rejection. We all hate to be rejected.
One of the other things that you said that was also interesting is that the riches are in the niches.
Yeah, I talk about in my book, there's various different types of entrepreneurs. Actually, lay out about 7 different types of entrepreneurs. And, if you know me and, I got a great landscaping company and I've got all these, Latino people working for me and we killing it. And you're like, damn, I think I can do better than Sonny. He's making a ton of money. I'm going to get in the landscaping business. Those are your copycat entrepreneurs. And I remember my dad wasn't in my life hardly at all. But I do remember one thing he told me, son, you may know everything that I told you, but you'll never know everything I know. Because he was older than me. He had more history being on this planet than I did, And that's the thing. When you see something, it may not be as it appears. And you got to put in the work. You got to put in the research. You just can't hit a microwave button and get to where I'm at. You know what I'm saying? So you have to it takes 10 years to become an expert at anything. And the motivation that I got is spiritual motivation that God never intends for any of us to fail in business. He wants us to live a prosperous life. And he's given each one of us a gift. Your gift may be different than my gift. My gift, I felt, and my passion is, I want to tell the positive stories of our people. How's that going to get me paid? I had to figure that out, right? And I had to figure it out from a way, not being, asking for alms for the poor colored people of the world because I'm telling good stories about the good ones. I had to make the economic, not argument, I had to put the economic platform together. I said, we're only 13% of the population, but do you know African Americans over-index in buying luxury goods? Do you know that a movie cannot be a hit and let African Americans go see it? We over-index our population percentage of 13%. Buying first-run movie tickets, we're at 35%. We over-index on buying luxury goods. We over-index on buying electronics, fashion, clothes. We set the table for fashion, for entertainment, for athletic accomplishments. And if I'm concentrating on the top 10% of the African American community, those are the people you definitely want as your customers. Not only do they buy insurance products, not only do they buy luxury goods, they buy vacations, they buy everything that you're selling. Those are people that you love to have as your clients, right? I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Yes.
Everybody want to have the top 10% of the earners as their clients, right? Makes sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense, right? And so we as African Americans in business, we look at marketing as an expense. Peter Drucker said there's two things that make a business extremely successful and valuable. Marketing is number one. Being innovative is number two. And of the two, marketing is number one. So we can't look at marketing our businesses as an expense. It's an investment to get more customers to do business with you. And it all don't necessarily cost money that you have to write checks for. But if you're breathing, if you can fog a mirror with your breath, you better be marketing your business 24/7, 365. When you turn that open for business sign on, you better be marketing. You got to ask yourself, I used to motivate myself by index cards. I had an index card on my mirror in the morning when I brushed my teeth. You know what it said? Who's going to pay me today? How can you open up a business and don't bring in revenue? That's a goose egg. That's zero. You worked all day today and for zero, for free? I got to bring in revenue every day. I got to learn how to shake a hand, make a friend, and get a check every day if I'm in business. So you have to have that athletic mindset, not to be shy and timid. You're either playing to win or you're playing to lose. And that is precisely the reason 80% of businesses fail in the first 12 months, because people are average or below average. So if you go and look at your birth certificate and you see the word average on there, it's okay for you to go ahead and be average, child. It ain't on my birth certificate. And my mama said I can be anything I want to be. And I know that I got the athletic mindset that I'm going to knock it out the park. In my personal life, I'm a shy guy. You would never believe that.
No, I would never believe that.
But you put me on stage, I flip that switch, girl. I'm getting all the change in your pocket. I ain't leaving nothing. And you're going to feel good about it. You're going to say, that's Sonny Martin, something else, man. But you know what? I'm going to service what I sell because it's all about relationship building for me. So I'm not going to just call you up and talk to you when I'm trying to get money out of your pocket. Every month has got a holiday in it. I'm going to get to know who your kids are. I'm gonna get to know who your wife are. If money was no object, it's one of the questions I ask, new customers. I said, can I ask you a question? You've had a phenomenal career. I mean, you're highly successful. Everybody loves compliments, right? There's endorphins that come from our body that reach out and make us feel good when people compliment us. That's part of my sales toolkit. I got to compliment people to make them feel good. And they have that beautiful smile like you have. And do it genuinely. And I said, if money was no object, and you had as much as you'd ever want to spend in your life, Sonia, tell me, what would you really want to do every day when you got up? If money was no issue whatsoever.
You know what's interesting is someone else just asked me this question and said that most people have a difficult time even answering it.
Well, when I was in business, I wanted to get to that point that I had more money. I didn't know that my time is my time.
Exactly.
One of the greatest things that you learn in interviewing some of the very, very top, highly, highly successful entrepreneurs, you know what their greatest passion is? The freedom. Because I don't have to answer nobody's clock. I don't have to shave when somebody tells me I need to shave. And if I wake up this morning and I'm like, I'm going to go to the airport and jump on a plane, go to Miami, just chill for the next 4 days. Mm-hmm. I can take off and go. I don't need nobody's permission. That freedom is the freedom the slaves must have felt when they crossed the Mason-Dixon line, that nobody was in control of their time and their labor. And I want all Black people to feel that kind of freedom. Success runs in our race. The other thing, last thing I'm going to say, everyone should get this book and read this book. It's called Black Fortunes.
By whom?
The book is by Samari Willis. It literally just came out earlier in 2021. And you know what the subtitle of this book is?
Please read it.
The story of the first 6 African Americans who survived slavery and became millionaires. The first 6 African Americans who survived slavery and became millionaires. Holla if you hear me. And we all know that Madam C.J. Walker was the first female millionaire in America. We all know that Madam C.J. Walker was the first female millionaire in America. She was in her grave by 1920. And she built a nationwide sales team sales team that was selling her products. But she learned from another millionaire up in St. Louis that taught her the beauty business. But this lady was just had a beauty school and teaching people the beauty business. She didn't have the vision that Madam C.J. Walker had, that she's not going to teach people the beauty business. She's going to give them products to sell. And she's going to get a piece of everything that they sell. But in 1906, Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois lived in Atlanta, Georgia at the very same time. 30 years after the Civil War, I think Civil War is 1865, if I'm correct. Booker T., the President Cleveland, after the Civil War, wanted to bring the North and the South, the Southern states together. The very first expo in the United States was held. It was called the Cotton States International Exposition, and it was held in Atlanta, Georgia. There's a historical sign, landmark sign at Piedmont Park in Atlanta where this international exposition was held. Now, this predates the automobile. It predates the Wright brothers being up in the air. You know how many people came to that Cotton States International Expo over 2 weeks' time? 80,000 people. And the president of the United States chose Booker T. Washington to give the keynote address. And the president trying to bring the North and the South together, he wanted to be able to show off the wares because the South was way richer than the North because cotton was their king and their gold. But any business that's got free labor is going to do very well. And so that's what the war was about. I don't care what anybody says. It was about money and free labor and slavery. And it's economics. And so Booker T. Washington gives this speech called the Atlanta Compromise. Google that speech. Booker T. Washington Atlanta Compromise speech. And that's what brought him to national acclaim, his speech. And in his speech, he basically says this: the Negro people need to pull themselves up by their own bootstraps. W.E.B. Du Bois was furious. He was furious. Being the first African-American to graduate from Harvard, the number one thing he was all about the talented 10th. We need to get our education. Now think about it. Where did W.E.B. Du Bois die at and is buried? Do you know?
No, I don't know.
He's in Ghana. He rescinded his U.S. citizenship and moved to Africa because he couldn't deal with racism. He was one of the founding individuals that started the NAACP with 5 or 6 other white people that started the NAACP. Booker T. Washington, what was his legacy? Do you know in 1906, Booker T. Washington, who said that the Negro needs to lift himself up, pull himself up by his own bootstraps and get skills. Do you know what he started in 1906? 1906, the National Negro Business League. A chapter of the National Negro Business League is still in business today in Atlanta, Georgia. It's called the Atlanta Business League. Booker T. Washington had the vision and the foresight to bring Black business people together. And they held a convention in 1906. And 6 Black millionaires attended the convention. The National Negro Business League predates any Chamber of Commerce. There wasn't no such thing as a Chamber of Commerce. It was a Black man that was trying to lift up his people economically so they could survive post-slavery and told them to get skills and learn those skills to make money. We're in a capitalistic society.
I mean, and isn't that what it is? It's understanding that if capitalism is the basis for almost every major decision that goes on in this country, that people have to understand that's the landscape, right? That's the landscape that we're in, and that's the way our community should be thinking. How we can raise or earn enough money through our businesses to make the differences or to make the political changes, to make the social changes that we need to.
Yeah, you know what? When you got money to sit at the table, you get what Aretha Franklin called RESPCT. The thing I was going to say is that if you talk to any marriage counselor, we went in my lifetime from hardly any Black people getting divorced. Now 54% of people get divorced. The number one reason is economics. In the Black community, you know, we've got single parent mothers with no fathers in the household because the Black men can't really cope and deal with the burden of racism in the workplace, the burden of racism with the police, the burden. I mean, we have a lot on us, and we've got to navigate those things very vociferously.
So as we are winding down, what would you say to people in the audience who are interested in starting businesses, who are sole proprietors right now, for people who are not able to, hire additional folks yet because either they feel stressed or they feel burdened, there's a challenge of not being able to get the loans or qualifying for loans, not even understanding how to operate in the system. I mean, what is it that we can actually do to improve ourselves, escalate our businesses, grow our businesses, and be more successful than we are?
Number one, I want to tell you something. Understand what I said earlier. The riches are in the niches. Look at those unique, innovative businesses that you can be in. Number two, understand there's got to be a demand in the marketplace for what product or service that you're offering people. If it's a very competitive field, I mean, there's a lot of Black women selling eyelashes. There's a lot of people selling weave. What make your weave and eyelashes different? That's necessarily not the riches and the niches. And the Asians control all that business, all right? I struggled with my first business. How do I get employees when I have no money to pay employees, right? Everybody, how do you get credit when you have no credit? Same conversation, right? You can sign people up as independent contractors and give them a piece of what they bring in and have the leadership skills to make them want to be on your team. Now, proverbial wisdom would tell you don't necessarily offer up equity at the start, make them earn it, but make it a bonus. If you bring in X amount of dollars and such and such and such, and you're able to exceed my expectations, and you're doing well, I cannot be successful and you not be successful when we're working together. That can't happen. Pimping ain't easy, okay? But if I can help make you successful and you trust me and I have integrity about our relationship, business relationship, then I want you, the Latinos and the Asians and the Italians And they don't even have to like each other, but they'll work together to make $1. Us, we still got that Willie Lynch syndrome a lot. But so what? Fight through it. My goal is for us to rise all the boats in our community. So there's more than one way to skin a cat. You know? Yeah, I don't have enough money to put somebody on a $50,000 salary when I'm just starting up a business to guarantee their work. But we got to get out of that mind frame. Like we talked about earlier, do you have to convince black people to eat chicken? You ain't got to convince no black people to eat no chicken, right? But we own less than 1% of Kentucky Fried Chicken in the major chicken chains in the United States. Now, you would have thought by this time in 2021 that there'd been some black folk that got somebody in their family that just will kill some yard bird and make you want to slap yourself and taste so good that we'd have had a national black-owned chicken franchise. Call it Big Papa's or Sonny's or something. But we ain't even there. Is there a demand in the black community for chicken? Well, it was fried chicken. Now people doing little freaky stuff. They're doing baked chicken because it's more healthier. Chicken and noodles, that Chipotle and all this. But they still eating Yardbird. Do we eat mac and cheese? Do we eat greens? That's us. You go to Atlanta, you'll see some Southern soul food restaurants. Greasy Spoons have been out there forever. Forever and ever. 40, 50, 60, 70 years. But Atlanta leads the nation in African-American entrepreneurism. They've got 4 black banks in Atlanta. The oldest one is almost 85 years of age. So, you know, we can look at our past. If these people were successful and they rose themselves and picked themselves up by their own bootstraps and became millionaires as former slaves.
Yeah, we can't continue to make excuses.
We got to be smarter than a third grader and figure it out. They left us the roadmap. Madam C.J. Walker left us the roadmap. A.G. Gaston. Have you heard that name before?
Yeah, absolutely.
Out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Yeah.
I interviewed Mr. Gaston at 94 years of age at his desk. His whole business model growing up as a kid was he wanted to own businesses from the cradle to the grave. He started off with an insurance company, a cemetery, funeral home, radio station, motel, and a bank. When he died, $360 million in the bank, in his own bank. Wears the same gray suit every day. But you know what he did that was really smart? He knew that if he was going to own these different types of businesses that every black person would have to use in their lifetime, he needed salespeople. So he went to the high schools and he put these young men in a training course and taught them how to dress with 100% pinpoint cotton shirts, to dress like, you know, Malcolm X had brothers in the nation, they're looking all sharp. And he taught them business. And the ones that graduated from his course got to work for his company. So he had quality control and trained people. He needed salespeople for his insurance company. He needs salespeople for his radio station. He needs salespeople for his funeral home, for the cemetery, and to book events at the hotel. We're all salespeople. Black Enterprise Magazine, your former employer, named him the entrepreneur of the 19th century. A.G. Gaston. 90% of black people never heard his name. And if you go get his book called The Black Titan, he leaves the 10 A.G. Gaston's 10 rules for business success is in his book. You can just Google that. The first black man to fly first-class commercial airline in the United States was A.G. Gaston. You know, the biggest historical thing about A.G. Gaston? The absolute biggest thing that he did. Martin Luther King would have never got out of a Birmingham jail cell because that sheriff, Bull Connor or whatever, he set his bail astronomically high that he didn't think no black person could raise that money. This black man wrote the check to get Martin Luther King out of jail. It was a $250,000 bond. He had to put up 10%, $25,000 in the 60s. Martin Luther King's beard would be down below his shoes if it hadn't been for A.G. Gaston. I don't want to hear no excuses, black people. There's no excuses.
And I think that's going to be an appropriate way to end, that we can't afford to have any excuses. We're seeing the repercussions of that. So thank you, Sonny. Thank you for coming and sharing your wisdom, your experiences, everything with us.
We just got a lot of work to do. You know, the National Black Chamber of Commerce states that this pandemic has taken 40% of black businesses out of business. So we got work to do. If it's going to be, it's up to us and nobody else. Let's make it happen.
How can we follow and support you as well? I know you're on social media.
Yeah, I've got several social media pages. The Urban Entrepreneur. I think the address is at the Urban Event Center. I've got 8,000 people that follow that page from 23 foreign countries, all 50 states. For years, I have intentionally every day posted something, positive stories and features about Black business, motivational quotes, things of that nature. Martin Luther King said it the best. He says, if you're just going to live to be a street sweeper, let it be said about you that you sweep streets like Michelangelo painted and Beethoven composed music. Let the angels and the archangels say upon your death that here lived the greatest street sweeper that ever walked the earth. We have it in our DNA to be the greatest of the greatest. We are. In the athletic fields and entertainment fields, and we were in the business fields. We need to bring that back. I'm passionate about it. My website is csonnymartin.com. You can get my book. I don't send people to Amazon. Jeff Bezos doesn't need any more of our money. You can go to csonnymartin.com and you can get it cheaper.
And buy
and free shipping.
And free shipping.
And free shipping.
And the book is The Making of a Black Millionaire, which is the goal for everybody listening.
This book right here. But anyway, I do a lot of business coaching. I give people an hour free just for an assessment of where they're at. And I'm just like that doctor. I write you a prescription.
Very good. Well, thank you so much. So we're going to encourage folks to follow you, to look you up, and to definitely read the book, The Making of a Black Millionaire. Thank you so much for being with us.
I thank you, Sonia. I can't thank you enough. I feel your spirit and your passion, and I'm honored to be a guest on your show. So thank you so very much.
And thank you all for listening. Take care.
The Business First podcast is hosted and produced by Sonia Aline. Associate producer, Ariel Mancebo. Executive producer, Ken Johnson. Find the Business First podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your podcasts. And on social at business_first_podcast on IG. The Business First podcast is a Mean Old Line Media production.